Hello. What did you do?
Okay, where did he say? Oh, right here.
Go live.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, Hello, Unama'ki. Hello, Turtle Island. This is Elizabeth Marshall doing Facebook Treaty Talk Live. We have one of the founders with us today. It's backwards on the screen. When I think anyways, this is Glenda. She's one of the founders here for the Treaty Beneficiaries Association. We've been at this for over 10 years, trying to bring treaty to help inform our people and to help our people out of poverty and oppression. So Glenda is one of the founders. Her late husband was as well. She's here today with her daughter, Marianne. Marianne has been an advocate and an activist for murdered and missing women. She did the Red Dress campaign, and she's just been carrying that torch for quite a while now. We have Grizzly Mama sitting with us too. My grandsons are here as well, so they'll be in and out, calling me once in a while because they're hungry or something. So we welcome all questions from everybody. We welcome your questions. We welcome your comments. If you post them on the wall of the Facebook, we're going to try of the live event, we're going to try and check those out to see if we can answer them as we go. So we have a bit of a script today. And the first thing we would like to do is thank everybody for watching our last Facebook Live event. It had like 2,500 or so views the last time I looked, and that just is unbelievable to me. I could never, ever, ever imagine that many people would want to learn about our treaty relationship, our treaty rights, and our treaty duties, as that many people were. So it's an honor, and I feel very blessed that much interest was there. We've had a very busy week, I have to tell you, in our activism work, but I'll fill you in a little bit about that. It seems to me that we have a lot of work coming to us, having to do more with the water, because as you know, the Mi'kmaq women, we were in charge of the water. We were the ones that were the water keepers. We were the ones that took care of the water. And even though we have all these modern things today, that spirit and that tradition is still with us as the Mi'kmaq women. So we are the ones that are out there and protecting and defending as best as we can and bringing awareness. But those things, we'll talk about that too a little bit, because we want to get into how we're now entered a friendship with the fishers of Donkin in Glace Bay, and that is a wonderful, wonderful development on our part, and we have a commitment from these wonderful people that they're going to help us to defend and protect the waters and the lands. So that to me is another miracle, and a beautiful, wonderful miracle. So the first thing that we'd like to talk about from the treaty is, people wanted to know, is what is best advantage in trade? What do you mean by best advantage in trade? What does a treaty mean? So when I first was introduced to this whole idea of best advantage in trade, I myself, even though I'm well educated in the formal education process, I couldn't understand what best advantage in trade meant. What is best advantage? I don't know what that is. So we had to look it up, and it's so interesting that even though the Mi'kmaq people have what we call best advantage in trade, the English language basically wiped out that phrase, best advantage in trade. So it's no longer commonly used today. It was sort of buried, I guess. But what it means is that our title and our treaties are international agreements. And they stem, as I had talked about before, our international treaties and our treaties from the 1700s. They come from our traditions and a culture that was way, 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 way older than England itself. That the treaties that came from the 1700s were struck in ceremony and deliberations by our people over about 100-year period. Because don't forget, the British Crown was begging our people for about 100 years for treaties, from the late 1600s until the final ones that were struck um, in 1776. So we have a long history of deliberating and treaty making within our nation, and our people are very skillful. But prior to entering into the treaties with the Crown, don't forget, our people also had treaties with other Ondo nations under the umbrella called the Wabanaki Maoyomi, or the Wabanaki Confederacy. And we had alliances. We had a sacred alliance with our relations, the Mohawks, the Abenaki, the Passamaquoddy, the Penobscot, the Mali, Sitkewah, and so on and so forth. We had an ancient historic alliance with them before we entered the treaties with the Crown. Now, what our ancestors secured is that what they meant by, I think, best advantage in trade was that our advantage, whatever the Crown or whatever any corporation is trading nationally, internationally, locally, whatever they're trading, we have a right to have an even better trade. That our advantage has got to be better. That's why in the Marshall ruling, one of the implications was that the Mi'kmaq people were to earn a moderate livelihood in the commercial fishery. And that at the end of the day, the Mi'kmaq people were supposed to be the number one quota holders in all of Atlantic region. But that didn't happen thanks to DFO. They had another agenda, and they kind of we're certainly not the largest quota owners in the Atlantic region anymore, are we? We never were, even close. I think Clearwater Seafoods is the big gun. They own it all. They're the biggest quota owners in the Atlantic region. So that's how much you can trust DFO and their laws. But even though they don't honor the law and they're breaking the law, that doesn't mean we have to. So whenever you engage in trade, just remember, whatever you're trading, you have a right to trade at a better advantage. For instance, they say this, let's say marijuana, which is a hot topic right now because it's a green, renewable resource that can be grown just as hemp. And the hemp can be used, for paper products, for rope making, for building supplies. There is a whole new number of uses for the product hemp. And it's a renewable resource, and it doesn't destroy the ecosystem, and it doesn't destroy the forests. Irving, did you hear that? Anyways, we no need to be for Irving and the foresters industry to be taking away our crown lands and exploiting them if we had a smarter approach to renewable resources. So we know that because Canada has already entered into the trade of marijuana for medical purposes, that gives the people under our treaties the right and authority to be able to trade as well. Not equal to what Canada is doing, but our right to trade has got to be better. We have a right to have a better trade than what Canada is doing in terms of the marijuana industry. So think about that, folks. Think about how you could help your communities develop this industry. You could create greenhouses where not only to that can be sustainable. They can be green energy ones where we don't have to operate it with oil and fossil fuel. We could do it with solar energy and so on with greener energy. So those are the things that we want to put out there, that assert your title, people. Assert your authority under treaty, because that's your right. You have a pot of gold. You have a rainbow. You have the most powerful treaties in the world. You have the most powerful treaties in history. Holy God, nobody has more powerful treaties than you guys. So why not? We've got to learn to work with one another, trust one another, build friendships with one another, so that we can help build this economy and build this Cape Breton. What is Suzanne writing? Treaty implementation and assertion of treaty provision of best advantage of trade. Right on. That's what it says, Suzanne. Padalus, you're absolutely right. And that's your right. Please assert it. Now, I'm going to take a bit of a break, and I'm going to ask Grizzly Mama to sit in my spot. And Marianne, I can't do it because whatever is on the screen is opposite from what we're... You don't want to hear about that.
We're
Anyway,
crisscrossed.
we're crisscrossed.
I'm sitting on that side.
Yeah. It's confusing for me. Anyways, Grizzly Mama and Glenda and Marianne are going to talk a little bit about the Highway of Tears and missing and murdered women that, of course, affects many of us in many ways. And then once they're done, then I'm going to go back and we're going to give you an update about our meeting with the Cape Breton fishermen in Donkin the other night, and what progress was made from there. And then we're going to talk about our need to develop further our treaty truck house and our need for and then we want to talk about Cornwallis just won't go away. They're honoring the bastard with a Christmas tree now. He's got a great big tree. He's standing up in front of him down in Halifax. I guess Mayor Wallace thought he might be Mayor Savage.
Wallace.
I don't know who Mayor Wallace is, but Mayor Savage wants that Cornwallis to have a Christmas tree with him down at the park there, which I think is ridiculous. But anyway, Grizzly Mama's coming on, and Kevin is here. So I don't know if he wants to go live with us, but we'll see. Thank you. Do you guys want water?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hi everyone in Facebook land. I am Chief Grizzly Mama from the Wolf Clan, Kitsan territory. I came here over 3 years ago in search of healing, and I found out more about myself, how the genocide has been killing my people. That's including cancer and PTSD, ADHD, and all these other diseases that they connect with the genocide. And the more I learn about myself, the more I see how my reaction to violence and how I became the monster that these people are on Highway of Tears. I was so honored to meet Glenda and her daughter here, and a lot of people in the Unama'ki territory have helped me to connect with the Creator and my traditional and my culture, and I'm totally honored to be here. Hi, Kevin. Okay, Glenda, would you like to start?
All right, my name is Glenda Junta. I am Marianne Junta's daughter, and my daughter does the Red Wrist Project presentation. She's been doing it for the last 2 years, maybe. Yeah. And well, anyways, I've been her backup. But anyways, a while back we discussed, like, we've done so much research and read into so much of this material about the Red Wrist Project and the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls and boys and men. And anyways, then we decided that one day we were talking that how it would be nice to take a journey on the Highway of Tears. And those who don't know what the highway of tears are, highway, tears is Highway 16 is well known as the Highway of Tears. This is in British Columbia. The Highway of Tears stretches out 720 kilometers. That's 450 miles. This route is a section of the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway, aka Park to Park, which spans across British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. On this highway, there's a sign warning girls not to hitchhike. It has been reported that there was between 16 to 40 plus victims. That spans from 1969 to 2011. The locations were mainly Prince Edward and Prince Rupert.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but anyways, what we wanted to do is we wanted to journey this highway. Me and Marianne, this is something we talked about, and I believe some of you may, I let it out a few months back anyways. And then the last meeting we were here, I brought my attentions to Grizzly Mama. So here she is, she wants to do the same thing, along with Rebecca.
With other sisters.
Yeah, and there's quite a few, and then and how we need to approach this thing is because none of us have money unless I win that I catch that joker, then I can fund the whole thing, but I don't think it's going to happen. But
We have an idea for how to fundraise.
Yeah, but
Yes, and
yeah,
you will
we have a few
explain-
ideas to fundraise, and then also as she indicated, it's a dangerous location. She's from there. And the policing is corrupt. There's a variety of problems that we can really run into, and it would be a safety issue. And I'm taking my daughter, and there's another young girl involved in this too. And I can handle my own, but I want to protect my girl here. But anyways, so we were hoping too to reach out to some of the community members here that are, I never talked to them yet, so I'm not going to give too much info about that. We'd like to talk to them first. And well, anyways, we would want them to assist us on this for our safety. And the process would be doing offerings along the highway at a certain, 450 miles. That's going to be a lot of offerings. When we do, because I was thinking too, maybe we should do spirit plates, but we can't put actual plates out. Tobacco ties. And I was thinking maybe with the plates instead of, if we can do nuts and berries. So maybe do our offerings of nuts and berries and we'll make it all natural, wrap it in lettuce or something. So that we don't leave a garbage or anything like that across. And I don't know, I was thinking maybe first time we were saying every mile, that's 450 miles.
What about the end of every day?
Or
The beginning of every day.
What we do back home, and I'm not trying to step over you.
Oh, no, I'm looking for ideas here.
The spirit moves in us as protector of the land. So when somebody in the group that's walking on the road, they'll feel something, and then we stop, and then we do ceremony. And now, because water is life and why we fight for water, this is what we don't do back home.
Yeah.
Is the water ceremony. So we're missing some ceremonies.
Elements.
Yes, some elements.
Yes.
And the water is the most important element that we need to work with the people, because we can't accept government funding because we want to do it the grassroots style.
Exactly.
And traditional style. And this is how I came across Canada, bringing my husband home to pass away in his own territory, and that's across Canada, and we left February 6th, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, let's put our whole faith in our Creator and our tradition, and just say, Creator, if this is what you need for me to do, then I will do it. And that's why I say it's very important that we do the sacred fire, and this is what we're going to talk about, because we need that wigwam, And the elements, what you're talking about, yes, we need to do the ceremony, we do that.
Everything
We're
that has to
missing.
do with our four directions, yes.
We're missing our, you have to touch that so it'll, uh, so, we need the four elements of that balance to make it really, concrete, the foundation.
Yeah.
Like what we're doing is building the foundation of, younger generation, like someday she's gonna be a great grandmother and she's gonna be teaching this to the next generation. So we wanna do it with the Creator's help and not accepting federal government. And I have nothing against the federal government. I mean, I do, but that's not the issue, but,
Yeah.
that's not why I
They
want.
they inherited all the problems from the past, it's
Yeah,
theirs now.
and we don't
It's
want
passed
to,
on.
we don't want to carry on the genocide that's been happening to our people, and I'm not afraid of the people there, but I understand the uh, the the security tension because, like what I was doing the morning of July the 1st, I was like mourning my daughter, and I had a hard time to let her go, and even though she's my sister's daughter, I was the one that helped raise her and took over, and she was murdered, and they made a big thing that she was a prostitute, and she was nothing like that. That was taken off of the Vancouver Sun, and I can't find it anymore ever since I did the missing and murdered inquiry. Another thing that happened with the missing and murder inquiry, my testimony was supposed to be private, and then there was undercover cops that came in. I reported it to the missing and murdered, and they said there was no such thing. So there is corruption in people in power, people in authority, but there's also corruption in our own community, and that's why we want to like do the cleansing of the highway of tears, because that's where the most corruption has been happening. I'm not saying it's lesser here or lesser there or more there. It's 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 taking our brothers and sisters. That's the whole point of my whole idea. That's what I needed to say. And did you want to say anything?
Marianne,
I started.
Anything you want?
what would you like to say, Dose? You just say what you need to say.
What made you do the dress?
The Red Dress Project?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I was on a pageant here in Eskasoni, about like almost 2 years ago. Yeah. And I needed a talent for this thing because it starts with introduction, talent night, and then ball night, crowning night. But that was the one thing I didn't have was my talent. And I was.
But she's a great singer, so I don't get that part. But anyways.
She just didn't want to make it plain.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
She wanted boom.
Oh, she did it.
Yeah.
I was on the internet and I read a lot, and the things I like to read is like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, things like that. I'm not morbid. But so as I was going through, I seen man confesses to murder because God told him to. So I was like, what is this? Because it was a news clipping. So I pressed it and I was scrolling through and I seen a name that was really familiar. So I asked my mom, who is this? Like, did we see this on the news before? Or like, and so she looked at me and she just stopped for a second and she said, "That's the man that murdered your aunt." So I was like, whoa. And then when I went back, pictures of the Red Dress Project started showing up. We don't know how. Just did because it wasn't there before.
It's just so random.
Yeah, so we took it as a sign from my dad.
And then something else popped up with Dad's name on it, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is super weird. It was so
There
weird.
was his obituary that popped up.
And then, and from then on, and she says, you know what? She says, you know what, Mom? I said, what? She says, I really think Dad wants me to do the Red Dress Project. you know. And it's something that Jeffrey shared with me too before we passed, you know. And like he'd see the commercials or whatnot, he'd see something, a sign of something, and he says, you know what? He says, you know, nowadays they're lucky to have this, at least this. He says, back in the day when my sister went missing, he says we had no support, no support. He said we had to sit there and wait. We had nobody to help us.
Oh.
So like, and it took somebody finding her accidentally, like, you know, so nobody was looking for her.
That was a repeated story at the inquiry because I was there for the 3 days in Membertou, and that same theme was said by many of the families where they didn't have the support of the police or any of the organizations that should have offered support, but instead a lot of the times they got they were given barriers instead of support. So did that happen to them too, Jeffrey's family?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty
So
much.
anyway, Dul, sorry to interrupt you.
I'm sorry.
How you got involved? You were inspired by the.
Oh, yeah. But I took it as a sign from my dad, and I told my mom, I said, I want to write a speech. So we started talking about it.
Did a lot of research.
Did a lot of research, and we still update
We still
the
research on
knowledge,
it.
yeah, like all the time, because you know as
More info.
days go
more
by,
knowledge.
the numbers get bigger, the more things happen, the more we need to know. So we wrote a speech, and I did it. It went viral on the internet, and you know I did win Queen from it. I represented my community with this project too. I represented my father. You know, I honored my aunt.
And you continuously do so.
Yes, I
It's something like, you know, it wasn't just a one night thing to make her famous, you know.
Yeah, even though
it's something she strongly believes in.
She's the voice of it.
Yes. And it encouraged a lot of people too to step forward and start doing their own thing. And I can recall like a few times, like I'd have like a few people I know, and they would say, oh, they're taking Marianne's idea. They're taking Marianne's idea. And she's like, nobody's taking my idea. She says, it's not my idea. The Red Dress Project comes from, you know, Jamie Black to begin with, you know, and then she says, like, you know, if somebody else is doing it, then she says, then they're receiving my message and they're passing theirs, you know, and that's how it works. That's how it works, no matter how. Like, you know, the message has to keep going. Everybody's got their own way, their own voice, and their own opinion how to approach it. You know, and that's the way it's done. And nobody stole Marianne's idea. She even said, well, I stole Jamie Black's idea. You know, that's the case. Like, you know, but it's a continuous message that needs not to stop.
Yeah, and even with me, like with my message, the way I say it, I created a video with Wapakoni Mobile, and it's all professional recording, professional everything.
Wow.
They did a
Yeah.
beautiful job.
And I did my film on that, and it came out really, really good.
What did you call it?
Protect Our Future Daughters.
Protect Our Future
Oh,
Daughters. That's what
nice.
she named it.
So
Her and Helena Lewis.
it's on the Wapakoni website if any of you guys actually want to see it. And it's something I did, so, you know, even after, like, many years, even when I'm gone, and, you know, it's just...
The message will still be there.
it'll
The
still
video will be there. The message will be there, huh?
Yeah.
It's,
That's beautiful.
going into contests, too.
And I think, too, like,
Wow.
with her speeches, like the presentations she does, and a lot of times, like, you know, it brings people to tears because it's powerful. And then she starts naming off. She starts off with our not video. Like our
Big Pond?
Big Pond.
Big Pond.
Our Big Pond mystery. She starts it off with our Big Pond mysteries, and then she names off everybody in between, and then she ends it with Enemy Agwash.
Oh.
You know, it's beautiful. Like,
Wow,
you know, it was
it's-
well done, and like, you know, and people, that's what they were doing. People were giving us names. Like, you know, when she was gonna upgrade her speech, people were giving us names. So
People,
we
they
saw it.
wanted their relatives
Yeah.
remembered, huh?
Exactly.
And honored.
Yes. You know, and then, like, you know, even in the film, she included Chief Leroy. And Chief Leroy, because, like, a aunt, well, her mother's first cousin, you know, was also, you know, murdered because it's an unsolved crime to this day,
Yes.
and she was left there to die.
I remember the day, remember the night clearly.
Yeah, and like so it impacts him also. And there's a variety of the community members, like relatives to even some I like some I know like personally, and they have maybe majority of their family members on there from the big palm mystery, the grandparents, and then the first cousins that went missing and murdered here, and then found later. But still, it's really impacting. And when you talk to people about it, or they talk to you about it, you can't help but feel remorse, hurt, pain, and then after a while, we had to start smudging it. And we were, advised, like, every time you do any reading or anything, talk to anybody about this situation, by all means, smudge. You need to smudge, because you're absorbing all that, and it was taking a toll on us.
Oh yeah. I
It
bet.
was taking a toll on us, when we're just
Especially when you're still grieving yourselves.
Yeah, we got a lot of grieving to do, but we're getting through all that. So, but with the funding, I would appreciate if we can find ways to fundraise this trip. It's a long way, and it's not going to be like a weekend getaway.
Oh, just pay airfare for two is about $2,500.
Exactly.
That's just airfare. That's not feeding you, taxis.
And
That's
at some
not.
point, we need to sleep.
Of
at
course,
least,
there's hotels that are required, and it's probably like a $5,000 to $6,000
Yeah.
fundraiser, I would say.
And the thing too, if we get there, we would have to rent a car to get through there.
Of course. That's right.
So a van to get through, whatnot, and getting back to it'll take too long for us to if we walk the highway.
You can't walk it, Glenda.
No,
And it's dangerous to walk it.
exactly. It's a highway, and it would be illegal too, I think.
Yeah, and it's dangerous. That highway is notoriously dangerous.
And maybe every certain mile, stop, to cut every certain mile to stop and do an offering and a prayer.
Yeah.
Well, I think me and the girls were talking, it's not all written in stone or anything, but when we're going across Canada like that, we share our stories in every community along the way. We're not walking, we're kind of like a convoy. That's what we do, and
There's a lot of little communities across there too. Wow.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
communities and
Unless we
right
can
now
stop in each every community, we can do that maybe.
in Halifax alone, we've had schools contact Rebecca Moore and ask her if we could do a speech on the Highway of Tears, why we did the shaving my head, and it was because of the genocide that was happening to the people, and it's still happening today. And I sacrificed my hair, it was nice and long and black.
Oh, I see that.
And because all the sisters that went missing and murdered that I know of on Highway of Tears, and that they're not even mentioned or even acknowledged, or even people that commit suicide, that's part of the Highway of Tears, because they think it's the only way out of this corrupt situation that we're in. And even today, my older sister, the oldest sister from my father, she's still a prisoner of these people, and I can't save her. I just felt like I couldn't save anybody. I was just trying to keep my own head above water, and after I did that, it was almost like letting all that grief go. Finally, let it go and learn from there. And I didn't think it was going to cause more corruption and more threats and more not only my life been threatened, like other ladies that were involved with the grassroots community here. It just has gotten to be overwhelming sometimes. So we move around and we do ceremonies, like you said. We really need to smudge ourselves all the time, and that's one thing I've learned at the river, at the Sugar River. I've been living there doing healing and doing ceremonies and learning about the tradition. And this is what the residential school took from me and my father. And yes, I really, really, really think it's going to work out.
Most definitely, I think so too.
Yeah, we just need to work out a plan.
Just keep at it.
Yeah, keep
Just-
at it, and
just
then
keep at it.
work out a plan, and maybe like come up with a number here of what we would need, and then Mary Ann Storm's got to do her little bit of magic there and bat her eyes at the guys there. Tell them we need your help. They always try to help you out.
Oh.
Yeah, they do. She's yeah. It's a positive. She's got that influential about her. Like it's always in a positive light. So they're always willing to help her out. Like and no, we're not bumming you money. We just
Yet.
But
Do we lose her again?
But we would like for you to assist us on this highway. That's the thing. It's the assistance. We want them to take part in this journey. And I think it's going to be a very powerful journey. And I like, I'm looking forward to this. I'm privileged to be involved in this. Like, it's like something, like I said, it's something we talked about, like a dream, And then when we come across Janice, and then she has the same thing, then same thought. We even got chills from that. Just talking about ooh, okay, this is not by chance. You don't meet anybody by chance. There's a reason for it.
Even meeting Henry, like that,
Yeah.
all the people I met, I know the Creator has put them in my life. For some reason or another, they have helped me or helped my people, or I try to help them. But it's not because I want recognition or power or anything. It's because I want that genocide and murder.
Well, it's the right way. It's the only way.
stop.
When you reach out and help somebody, for no matter what reason and no matter who they are, it's in our culture. It's who we are. That's what I instill in my kids. You know what I mean? I can have $10 in my pocket right now, and if somebody needed the $9, I'll give them the whole $10. Even though I needed something, I can do without it today, but they need this now. And I've done that many times, but I don't go posting on Facebook. Oh, I gave money, look at me. Pat me on the back.
Are we ready to move?
Yeah,
I
practice
think-
humility.
No. We'll just trace with Christine. Woo!
I'm gonna have Kevin sit here.
Okay, the next one we have for our special guest is our Kevin. Are you going to sit next to me?
Well, of course he is.
Kevin, one of our Treaty scholars, is here. Sparkles, there, I'll take you because your nails are very loud. So we have Kevin Christmas here. He's going to talk a little bit about treaty.
Am I?
I think so. Or what would you like to talk about? I shouldn't tell you what to talk about. I'm very sorry. I'm not telling him what to talk about. I'll let him decide what to talk about. He's smarter than me. What do I know?
Well, I'm Kevin Christmas. Glad to meet you. Sorry about the glasses, but I'm sensitive to the light.
We're sitting by the window.
Yeah, and the glare will have me looking very angry if I took them off. Yeah, I'm Kevin Christmas. If you're on Facebook, you probably read some stuff that I wrote. I'm been involved with treaty a long time, and have a lot of friends who've been very understanding and helpful and supportive, and I think over the last little while we kind of came to the realization that the days of the Indian Act are over and the time for treaty is upon us. So quite a few years ago we had a major, I think it was around 94, we started having a lot of women returning back into the communities and taking leadership roles in the grassroots. Where we first noticed it was in Tobic, where the women were coming back from the States and bringing some ideas and organization to folks that were trying very hard to get by. And that triggered a whole lot of action in that community, and there was stuff going on there that related to the Indian Act and status and identity and a whole bunch of things. And it got us looking at this question of who is the legitimate lawmaker in our community. We don't have a government per se, and we don't have a tradition of making laws to put them in a book and hide them somewhere.
Or a Bible.
Or a Bible. Yeah, so we started looking at this question of what exactly is in treaty that's not in the Indian Act. And what we found was all of the characteristics of an international treaty were inside the treaty, and there was nothing in the Indian Act that came anywhere near it. And there was this one section in the Indian Act that said that it was subject to the terms of any treaty. So when we went back and looked at the treaty, we saw words that I guess the only way to explain it would be that the counterfeit meaning was in the Indian Act to what the treaty was saying.
Yeah.
So the Indian Act read more like a counterfeit treaty than a treaty. And that led us into a whole lot of other discussions and analysis. And at the end of the day, we saw that the French reading of our treaty was closer to the Micmac understanding of the treaty than anything else. And the French words that were being used captured better the meaning than the English words that were commonly used. But there were some words that we couldn't understand because they were against what we understood the treaty to be. So anyway, after going and speaking to a whole lot of elders about what we were missing, there was a realization, I guess, that the root of the treaty goes back a whole lot further than we had imagined. And it related directly to a whole lot of old stories that we were coming across that were sort of dispersed amongst our families in the nation. And all these stories we're talking about 7 generations ahead. It was reading the treaty as instructions 7 generations ahead. It was a roadmap that was hidden within the documents. And when we understood finally the prehistory going back 1700 years or 1600 years, it started making sense that the story behind the seven fires, the story around the migration, the stories around obtaining instruction from Creator, it really started to hit home with us because we couldn't reconcile church doctrine with treaty. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. We didn't see treaty as being a document that made us another people or of another belief system or Catholic or obtaining any sort of status. But what we saw was that the treaty was really guidelines. The treaty was saying your identity is more important to Creator than anything else. And the instruction that we got was to keep that integrity sacred. Creator is saying, I will guard your roots. I will protect them. You will not be assimilated. My promise is that you will never be annihilated from this earth. But there are people coming, and what the effect of them arriving will be disastrous. And 7 generations from now, you'll be faced with questions you're not ready for. You won't have a basis for the understanding that you'll need to unwrap the hidden messages in the treaties. The instruction that came forward was really when the previous speaker, when they're talking about how this is inherent in our blood, this idea of helping, it goes all the way back. Creator said, you if you want to talk to me, you talk to me directly. You don't need any intercessor. You don't need any ceremony. You turn and talk to me. He said, it's really important when you gather to help people that you get the best advice before you take any action. That you have to do that. And it's not a question of not gathering. It's a question of when you gather. So our mission and part of our identity is that gathering to help. And the third thing he said was, you have to trust in my provision. That everything is already available for you. It's already there for you. It was made for you. So when we read the treaty and we see the sections in the treaty that talk about provision and livelihood and fishing and hunting and trading, that's the authority that's behind that. It's not something we dreamed up as some capitalist vision from some savage history. It's instruction from Creator that said you have to trust in that link with creation. And you think, that was given 1,763 years, well, 1,673 years ago, actually, it was given.
1,673?
Yeah. And here we are, that much later, and we're still gathering to help people. And we're still praying to Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still seeking the best advice. And we're still trusting in the provision of Creator. And that's what's kept us close to our identity. So the teaching was meant to secure our identity. It wasn't meant to prepare us for assimilation and annihilation. And Creator said, all of this most precious knowledge, all of these medicines, all of these things that made you who you are, we're going to take all those things and hide them away, because you're going to need those medicines 21 generations from now, 7 generations after they arrive. Bear said, Creator is true to his word. And there are people coming. And it's inevitable that it's going to have an impact. So, following the arrival, the treaty instruction, the bundle that had the treaty instructions were very specific instructions to the people that were going to be remaining here when the arrival occurred. And the ones who left would return 21 generations later with all of the information.
Do you want me to say their name?
No, it's okay.
No? Okay.
So, what I'm saying is that when we talk about the treaty coming from Creator, it came at a time when our faith was broken like it is today.
Yeah.
Where we're mad at God, we're mad at creation, we've lost touch with nature, we're stuck inside all the time, we don't gather anymore to help our people. Those are the signs of assimilation. And those are the benchmarks that Creator said, when you stop doing this, then you're assimilated. So the treaty is our identity fortress. Treaty says we're sovereign in our identity because Creator guarantees it. So we can't become another nation, another people. We can't. And when we talk about our treaty, we're talking about those instructions. That was the promise. That was the contract from Creator to us. So when you look at a replay of our history, you'll see that our land was never given up. You'll see that our way of life was never, ever, ever up for question. But allowance was made for the non-Indian who arrived to become something that he wasn't, which is a unified human being, with his own destiny. But to me, it was a submission to our way of life. Because the treaty instruction said, it was 3 things in the treaty instruction. Number 1 is you have to teach them survive. Number 2, you have to teach them to live in peaceful coexistence with each other. And number 3, you have to give them every opportunity to create a governance for themselves, for them to govern themselves. So we couldn't impose our way on them, and they, of course, couldn't impose their way on us because they didn't have a way. Their way was war. Their way was destruction. Their way was conquering. But with a tribe that's protected by Creator, that's just not going to happen. So here we are, we're at the end of the prophecy, and we're at the end of that time that was allotted. We're preparing to go and get that information that was sent away. We're going to make it available to the young people, and we're going to explain to them that your autonomy, your independence, your tribal nationhood is the most powerful instrument and model in the world. And every nation, every tribal nation is guaranteed no less than the best. And we have the best. So it's really important that you concentrate and look at what we have, try to understand as much of it as you can, and leave room in your mind for overlaying your history and seeing what was denied you. When we saw the Robinson Superior first treaties, number 1, and when they went on to 11, it was just what you call a treaty of attrition. It started with a bare minimum and just kept getting worse. But when in fact, if you look at the Casco Treaty and look at a few other treaties, you saw that our people demanded that whenever you go into those tribal areas, you have to offer them what we have. And if they succeed in getting something that we don't have, then it's automatically an adhesion to us.
No.
We have technical difficulties
Well,
here.
I'm going to have to block it off for a second. I'm very sorry. We're trying to do record for YouTube, and there we go. We're still doing it. Okay.
Oh, okay. We're back from our technical abyss. Yeah, so a lot of the new information that we have is new for our people, and a lot of the old information will be new to the other treaty people across the country. But if all other tribal nations in this country, when they're going to talk to Canada about treaty, you have to understand that you're sovereign to sovereign already.
Yeah.
It's already been done. The precedent has already been set. There is no way that anything can be taken away from that precedent. And there's no legal way that the government can step aside from the word guaranteed.
Or forever.
Well, our treaty says forever.
Yeah. Okay.
That's only because they couldn't come up with a word that would describe us still being here after they were all gone.
Gosh.
Because we told them our treaty is forever with Creator, not with you.
Exactly.
And hopefully you'll come to the understanding of what we're talking about and join with us in our understanding. Because your redemption draws nigh. This is what it's about. It's time that you understood original rights and original people and original understanding. And because it's original, it's unique, it's one of a kind. But our people had the best treaty coach that ever existed. And we're backed by the most powerful being that ever existed. And we read his book, and we know how it ends. And we're just glad we're on that side of it. And we encourage everybody to take treaty to heart and to really try to understand that we're not trying to take over the world. We're trying to bring the world into treaty. so that you understand that the one who gave us this treaty is the one that also gave you the 10 Commandments.
The higher power.
So these are our commandments. These teachings are our guidelines for life. So long as we pray, work for each other, help each other, and trust in Creator, we'll stay Indian. But when we stop helping, when we stop praying, and when we lose touch with creation, bye-bye. Any questions?
I'm not sure. I can't. Can you see my wall from yours, Christy Mama?
No, it's nothing on mine.
I can't read that from the wall. I don't know how to move it. We'll have to. I guess maybe we can answer some of the questions next week that we're not really. We're not really computer savvy, but while we have a little break, I'd like to give you an update, a little bit on about how we went and we became friends with using our treaty. We were invited to go to support the fishermen and the fishers at Donkin in just outside of Glace Bay. The people there, the fishing community there, were very worried because the Cameron Coal Mining Company that's situated there, which had just laid off 50 staff a couple of weeks prior, they had intended they were going to put seismic testing, which they called minimum, and only for a short while. But they wanted to do seismic testing in Donkin, near where some of the fishermen have their lobster licenses. And the fishermen there didn't see any need for it, and they didn't want it because one of the fishermen that I was talking to, I don't want to say his name, but he was telling me he in his family they've been fishermen for 7 generations, commercial fishermen, lobster fishermen. And he has been fishing all of his life. And he's probably about my age or so. And the last time that they did seismic testing near his fishing grounds, he did, that was in the early 70s. He did not have lobsters for 7 years. 7 years the lobsters left that area after one seismic testing.
That number, though.
So they know from experience and from their own oral traditions that seismic testing is no good. It's no good for any wildlife whatsoever. So we agreed to join alliances with the fishermen. We interrupted, I shouldn't say we, me, we interrupted the meeting of the Cameron Coal Mine as they were presenting some data on how they had done seismic testing elsewhere, like in Australia, and how they felt it was a minimum amount that were affected. And anyways, we interrupted their meeting and we told them that they had no authority whatsoever to do any type of seismic testing because the Mi'kmaq people were never ever consented. We didn't receive free, prior, or informed consent. And we as the title holders, we were not going to allow them to do any further damage to the natural resources. The second thing is, as women, we're the water protectors. The women are the ones traditionally in our Mi'kmaq culture where we've always been the water protectors. So it was up to us. Now, we got a commitment. I asked for their friendship. I requested their friendship of the good people of Donkin. And the good people of Donkin have given us their friendship. And they've agreed to work with us. Some of the fishing families have agreed to work with us. Now, yesterday, I think, Cameron Mining Corporation announced that they will delay seismic testing for 1 year. So we interpret delay to be really say delay. We're not going to be delayed to. You can delay all you want, but we know it's a forked tongue word for delay. And we're not interested. Instead, we'd like to work with the Glace Bay and the Donkin community. Why don't we apply our treaty rights? Why don't we create something of mutual benefit that future generations can enjoy and can appreciate? Something that 7 generations from now, they're going to say, oh my God, did you hear that the Mi'kmaq people and the people of Donkin got together in friendship and created this beautiful thing for the economy of Cape Breton Island? Well, we can do that. All we have to do is work together. And I think we can do that too. I really believe strongly now that with friendships made, we're just going to build upon those friendships. And good things are going to come for all Cape Bretoners because that's what we want too. So we let the Cameron mining know that we don't want their seismic testing. And that even though they're saying they're delayed for 1 year, they shouldn't get too comfortable because our oral traditions and our memory is better than anybody else. We have carried within our DNA. And we're not going to forget 1 year time and say, okay, Cameron, have fun seismic testing, kill a few whales and destroy the lobster fishery and the ground fishery and geez, But yeah, you'll have a couple of jobs out of it. Nope, we're not going to agree to any of that. So, Cameron, you're going to have to figure out another way to do things because we're not going to let you do any seismic testing. And we feel that if you want to disrupt and destroy the people's trade, and then maybe we'll have to disrupt your trade too. We can do that. That's our authority. That's our right. The other thing is the Cornwallis Monument. Would you believe the Cornwallis Monument in Halifax, instead of taking that scalper down or abolishing the scalping laws in Nova Scotia, Mayor Savage has put up a Christmas tree to keep Cornwallis company. Now, you poor taxpayers in Halifax, how much are you paying for the lights, the trees, I don't know.
And the RCM security
Oh
today.
yeah, the 24-hour-a-day security that's watching Cornwallis and his tree. This is getting really, really ridiculous. Mayor Savage, you just might as well put that guy to sleep because it's ridiculous. But anyways, I can't read any of the questions. I'm so happy you joined us. Does anybody have any other comments or?
Well, back to the missing and murdered in our journey. I was thinking when we go on our journey, I was just messaging her in my book here, letting her know maybe we can stop in the communities and do the ceremonies there, whatnot, and still lay our ties on the highway and whatnot, and do our little offerings. And one of the offerings I was just telling her about too is the tallow.
Mm.
So I want to talk to somebody about that, and I want to see first if it would be appropriate to take the tallow along. I can prepare it. I was taught how to prepare it last year because I have to do it myself for my husband's 1 year ceremony.
Okay.
So I know how to prepare it.
All right.
So, but I would need some tallow, and that's the what was it? It's the inside of the bone, the marrow.
Oh, marrow.
It's
For
the
what, the
marrow.
moose?
The moose.
Okay, you hear
Yeah.
that? Gunnigan? I hope you're watching. If you hear it is there any possible way that you can, the next hunting trip, that you could take some of those,
Give us some
tallow from the bones of the moose?
That'll cover 450 miles.
Well, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be. We can just So, I guess that's it. Joseph is here. Grizzly Mama, Glenda, Kevin, Marianne, and the dogs are here.
Just one other thing.
Okay, Kevin's got another thing.
The reason the seismic testing is such a problem is you're talking about a screen that's 40 times the human voice.
Oh my God.
for 15 days straight. It will destroy the phytoplankton.
Yes, they said that.
And the phytoplankton can't bear that shock.
That's right.
And they're talking about doing it over a 1,500 square kilometer area. That will kill that whole area of marine life. Just to see whether there's more coal that can be harvested to destroy the environment. Absolutely doesn't make sense.
No.
There must be something more.
On the agenda.
The people who are interested in seismic testing results use surrogates to get that information. And I think there may be a little bit more to this than destroying the fishery in a 1,500 square kilometer area. That's horrible. The fishermen were not fully consulted on all of this. There is no independent scientific impact analysis.
None.
There is no environmental assessment
Nope.
on the techniques and the damages.
And a DFO only had studies from Australia.
We know that when they were doing seismic testing in New Brunswick, or trying to do it, the animals were literally running out of the woods and onto the roads to get them to stop because the shock was so much going down into the ground. So, sometimes it takes a conscience to stand up in a meeting and say, please, think about this. Industry just can't have carte blanche in our sensitive fishery.
No, we're not going to let it happen. Bottom line.
No.
N-O, Cameron, no. We're not going to let you do it. So you should just go and invest your money in something else that makes better sense. And we suspect this might be just a precursor for your potential or your hopes and dreams to frack. Well, guess what? We're not going to let you frack either.
No.
So dream on, Cameron. Anything else, Kevin?
No, it's...
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much and we'll be back in 2 weeks again for our next Treaty Talks Live. See you guys! Okay, press that one.
Okay.
Press the red button, so it's up in the middle, right there, Grace. The little red button.